The automatic doors of TechSphere hissed shut, sealing 17-year-old Elijah Vance in a temple of chrome, glass, and the low hum of expensive electronics. For Elijah, it wasn't just a store, it was a gallery of possibilities. He navigated the aisles with the reverence of a scholar in a library, his fingers trailing over the sleek laptops and powerful graphics cards he could only dream of affording. He was a self-taught coding prodigy, spending his nights building apps and modifying hardware in the cramped bedroom he shared with his younger brother. Today, he was here for a specific high-capacity SD card for a school project, a purchase he'd saved for from 6 months of bagging groceries. He found the card, a small, expensive rectangle locked in a clear security case. He carried it carefully to the checkout counter, his mind already buzzing with the code he would write. The store manager, a man in his late 40s named Mr. Higgins with a comb-over and a permanently pinched expression, watched him approach. Higgins's eyes, small and suspicious behind thick glasses, performed a swift, predatory scan. The worn sneakers, the slightly too large hoodie, the youthful black face. His mental algorithm, corrupted by prejudice, spat out a single, damning conclusion. Elijah placed the case on the counter. Higgins picked it up slowly, turning it over in his hands as if inspecting a counterfeit bill. "And where did you get this, son?" Higgins asked, his voice dripping with a false, paternalistic concern. "From the media aisle, sir. It was the last one," Elijah replied, his politeness automatic, a shield against a threat he sensed but hadn't yet seen. "Was it now?" Higgins's lips curled into a thin, unpleasant smile. He held up the case. "The security tag feels loose. These cases are often tampered with. Empty shells get swapped onto the shelves. It's a common trick." Elijah's heart began to pound. "I didn't tamper with anything. I just picked it up and brought it here." "Of course you did," Higgins said, his voice rising, drawing the attention of the other Saturday shoppers. "You expect me to believe a kid like you has $200 for this? Let's see your receipt for the item." I haven't paid for it yet," Elijah said, confusion and anger warring within him. "That's why I'm here." At the counter, Higgins let out a short, theatrical laugh. "Don't play dumb with me. I mean the receipt from before. The one that proves you didn't just snatch this from the shelf and are trying to brazen your way out with a return for cash. It's an old scam." The accusation was so absurd, so blatantly unfair, that for a moment, Elijah was speechless. He was being accused of a complex fraud for trying to make a legitimate purchase. "That doesn't make any sense," Elijah said, his voice trembling. "Why would I do that? I'm trying to buy it." "Because you're a thief." Higgins barked, slamming his palm on the counter. The entire store went silent. "I've been watching you, loitering, touching everything. I know your type. Now, empty your pockets. Now, or I'm calling the police." Tears of hot, humiliated fury pricked at Elijah's eyes. He was trapped. The other customers stared, their gazes a mixture of pity and suspicion. He was being publicly undressed, his character shredded, for the crime of being a black teenager in a store. With shaking hands, he turned out his pockets. A few crumpled dollar bills, his school ID, and his house keys clattered onto the counter. No stolen goods. No fake receipts. Higgins's triumphant expression faltered for a second, then hardened again. The absence of evidence to him was not proof of innocence, but proof of a clever criminal. "The police will sort this out," he sneered, reaching for the phone. Just then a calm, authoritative voice cut through the tension. "That won't be necessary." A man stepped forward from the small crowd that had gathered. He was in his early 30s, dressed in a simple but exquisitely tailored jacket and jeans. He had the relaxed confidence of someone for whom money was a tool, not a worry. This was Julian Carter. "I saw the entire thing," Julian said, his voice even but carrying immense weight. "This young man did nothing wrong. He selected an item and brought it to the register. You manufactured this entire confrontation." Higgins puffed out his chest, affronted. "And who are you?" "This is store policy. I have a right to protect my inventory from shrinkage." "Shrinkage?" Julian repeated, a cold smile touching his lips. He gestured to the pathetic contents of Elijah's pockets on the counter. "You mean from him?" You just terrorized a customer and future leader for no reason other than your own pathetic prejudice. He turned to Elijah, his expression softening. What's your name, son? Elijah, he whispered, still reeling. Elijah, Julian repeated, committing it to memory. He looked back at Higgins, who was now looking less sure of himself. You've made a catastrophic error in judgment today. Julian pulled out his phone, not call a lawyer, but to open a banking app. He navigated to a specific screen and held it up for Higgins to see. It displayed a simple, staggering number, a bank balance of just over $47 million. Higgins' eyes bulged. The color drained from his face. You see, Julian said, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. I was in the market for a new investment, a tech retail chain. Perhaps I came in today to get a feel for the customer experience. And you, he said, his gaze locking onto Higgins, have just provided me with the most valuable market research possible. You've shown me the rotten core of this operation. He slid the phone back into his pocket and picked up Elijah's SD card case on the counter. Elijah, this is on me, Julian said, handing him the case. Consider it an apology for the ignorance you were just subjected to. He then looked at the stunned cashier. Ring it up, and while you're at it, ring up one of every top-tier laptop, tablet, and periphery you have in stock. It's all for him. He turned his icy gaze back to the manager, who looked like he was about to be sick. As for you, Mr. Higgins, Julian said, clean out your desk. You're no longer the manager of this store. In fact, by the end of the day, you won't even be an employee of this company. He took out his phone again, this time hitting a speed dial number. Sarah, it's Julian. Get our acquisitions team on the line. I want to make an all-cash, preemptive offer for the entire TechSphere retail chain. Yes, the whole thing. Tell them the deal is non-negotiable, and my first executive order is the immediate termination of a manager named Higgins from the downtown location for gross misconduct and racial discrimination. He ended the call. The silence in the store was absolute. Julian put a hand on Elijah's shoulder. Let's get your new gear loaded up. And then, Elijah, I think you and I need to have a conversation about your future. The news broke like a thunderclap. Tech billionaire Julian Carter buys TechSphere chain, fires manager in racial profiling incident. The story had everything. A viral injustice, a billionaire savior, and a dramatic corporate takeover. Hashtag TechSphere got bought, and hashtag Justice for Elijah trended for days. Elijah's small bedroom was now a tech enthusiast's dream, filled with unopened boxes of the most advanced computers money could buy. But the gear felt strange, almost tainted. It was a trophy of a battle he hadn't asked to fight. A week after the incident, Julian invited Elijah to the new, temporary headquarters of the company, now being rebranded as Nexus. Julian's office was a Spartan space, all clean lines and whiteboards covered in complex algorithms. The gear is nice, but it's just stuff, Julian said, as if reading his mind. The real question is, what are you going to build with it? Elijah, still overwhelmed, shrugged. I don't know. My school project, I guess. Think bigger, Julian urged. That man, Higgins, didn't just see a teenager. He saw a stereotype, a threat. He saw data points that added up to criminal. What if we could change that data? He gestured to the whiteboards. This company is mine now. I'm overhauling everything, and I want you to help me. Me? Elijah asked, incredulous. I'm just a kid. You're a builder, a problem solver. I read the code for that community garden app you built for your neighborhood. It's elegant, efficient, you see systems. Julian leaned forward. I'm creating a new, mandatory training program for every employee, from the C-suite to the stockroom. It's on unconscious bias and anti-discrimination. But I don't want it to be another boring corporate slideshow. I want it to be powerful, unforgettable. He slid a tablet across the desk. On it was a mock-up of a virtual reality simulation. I want to build the walk, Julian said, his eyes alight with passion. A VR experience. You put on the headset, and you become a black teenager trying to buy a simple item in an electronics store. You experience the subtle glances, the being followed, the heightened suspicion, and finally, the public accusation. You feel the heat of humiliation, the powerlessness. I want every employee to walk a mile in your shoes. Elijah stared at the mock-up, his mind racing. He could code this. He could design the interactions, program the AI of the virtual store manager to be subtly hostile. He could make it feel real. You want me to build the training? Elijah whispered, I'm offering you a summer internship, a paid position leading the development team for the walk. Your lived experience is your qualification. Your coding skill is your tool. We'll hire senior developers for you to manage. It was an impossible opportunity. It was turning the worst moment of his life into a force for change. Meanwhile, the old guard of TechSphere was not going quietly. The former CEO, a man named Robert Sterling, was furious. His golden parachute was tarnished by the scandalous circumstances of the sale. He saw Julian as a grandstanding outsider and Elijah as a pawn. Sterling went on a business news channel, playing the victim. This is a witch hunt. A good man, Higgins, lost his career because a billionaire wanted to play social justice warrior with a kid who was acting suspiciously. This VR training is a fantasy. It's a waste of shareholder value. The narrative, once so clear, was now being muddied. A hashtag Fire Julian hashtag was started by a fringe group. The pressure was mounting. In the Nexus boardroom, a few holdover executives from the old company voiced their concerns. Julian, the Sterling narrative is gaining traction. Perhaps we should slow down on the VR project. It's making us a target. Julian stood firm. The project is the point. It's not a distraction from our business. It is our business now. A company built on trust cannot be led by fear. But as Elijah and his small team worked furiously on the prototype for the walk, they faced sabotage. Their code repositories were mysteriously corrupted. Key files were deleted. It was subtle, deniable, but effective. The project was being stalled from the inside. Elijah, working late one night, found a digital fingerprint in the server logs. The access ID belonged to a senior VP who had been Robert Sterling's right-hand man. He wasn't just fighting code anymore. He was fighting a shadow war against the entrenched prejudice of the old system. They didn't want his story to be told. Elijah didn't confront the saboteur directly. Instead, he and Julian set a trap. They created a fake, final version of the walk simulation, filled with hidden trackers, and placed it on the server. Within hours, the same VP accessed the file and attempted to delete it. The digital trap snapped shut, recording every keystroke and providing undeniable proof of corporate espionage. The VP was fired on the spot, and Julian used the evidence to threaten Robert Sterling with a massive lawsuit, finally silencing him for good. With the internal opposition crushed, the development of the walk proceeded at lightning speed. Elijah proved to be a natural leader, his quiet intensity and brilliant mind inspiring the seasoned developers on his team. 6 months later, the inaugural Nexus store opened its doors. The media was there, but the real event was happening inside, for employees only. Every single member of staff, from the new CEO to the part-time cashiers, was required to experience Elijah's VR simulation. The room was silent as the first group removed their headsets. Many were in tears. A veteran store manager, a woman in her 50s, approached Elijah. I never understood, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I thought I was just being vigilant. I didn't realize it felt like that. Thank you for showing me. The simulation didn't just teach. It transformed. It built empathy in a way a memo or a lecture never could. At the grand opening, Julian stood on a small stage at the front of the store. Elijah stood beside him, no longer the nervous teenager from a month before, but confident young man with a purpose. This company was founded on innovation, Julian said to the crowd of employees, customers, and press. But we lost our way. We forgot that the most important technology isn't the one we sell on these shelves. It's the human technology of dignity, respect, and fairness. He put his arm around Elijah's shoulders. This young man was once told he didn't belong here. Today, his code is the foundation of our company's culture. His experience is our greatest teacher. Julian then made one final announcement. Education shouldn't be a privilege. Therefore, Nexus is founding the Future Builders Scholarship Fund. It will provide full-ride scholarships to students of color pursuing degrees in technology and computer science. And I can think of no one better to help choose our first recipients than the young man whose courage started it all. He turned to Elijah. "Elijah, the floor is yours." Elijah stepped to the microphone, looking out at the crowd, at the store that had once been his nightmare and was now a symbol of his triumph. "A few months ago, I walked into a store just like this one with $200 and a dream," he began, his voice clear and steady. "I was told my dream made me a suspect. I was told my ambition looked like a crime." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Today, we're making sure that never happens to anyone else. Not here. We're not just selling tech. We're building a future where the next kid like me is seen for what's in his head, not what's on his skin." He wasn't just a victim who got lucky. He was an architect. The store hadn't just been bought for him. It had been rebuilt by him. As the crowd erupted in applause, Elijah knew the real work was just beginning. But for the first time since that terrible day, he felt not the heat of humiliation, but the warm glow of a future he was helping to code into existence. The end.